a big part of my work, both with tarot and the runes, and this video is more on the runes, is hoping to teach tools to empower you to work with the tarot or the runes yourself. I just think it is much more important to find your way of understanding the tarot or the runes rather than repeat a formula that's worked for someone else. So with my tarot book, if you look really closely, and this is a photograph of my actual desk, my actual reading deck, and my favorite coffee mug, which I'm still drinking from at this point. Hoping you can see there is actually a little rune. It's a rune that was carved for me by a friend on a little piece of antler. That is a Thor rune. And I thought I wanted to sort of start a series of videos about the runes. So if you're interested about the runes, what's a great way to start? First thing to do is to grab yourself a couple of books. I'm going to share my 3 favourite books. This is a second family copy of this book. And as you can see, this one also has coffee or hot chocolate marks on it, not sure. There is nothing wrong with reading children's books about the Norse mythology. Just a point to reference, I love the Marvel movies. My kids love the Marvel movies, but they don't always really reflect the actual mythology of the Norse. So great to watch, but just don't take any of that as law, as it were. So a great children's book is always a good way to start. It's popular. He's a fantastic author. It's incredibly readable. Don't feel that you have to wade through old texts to get a grasp of Norse mythology. It's far better to read something that's enjoyable, that you love reading, that you want to revisit time and time again to get a feel of the Norse mythology. And the same is true about, Tolkien, The Last Kingdom, the Vikings. As long as you understand that these are fictional accounts based upon the Norse mythology, then they're great to lose yourself in. And then when you're ready, at least one copy of the Poetic Edda is definitely worth having. The thing with the Poetic Edda is they are, of course, translated from Old Norse into English. So there are lots of different translations out there, some of which are really scholarly and hard to read, but fascinating. Some of which are translated into much more readable English and are more enjoyable. So pick what works for you. This one has been lent to me by a friend and I still have it a couple of years later. But Jackson Crawford's one is a great one to start with if the style suits you. So, that's my advice for getting started. Now, I'll take all those away. I work with the Younger Futhark, and there are 16 runes in the Younger Futhark. And one of the real advantages of working with the Younger Futhark is we have what's called the rune poems, and these are on my website. So if you link onto my website, you'll find them there, and you can find them, in any good book or online, the rune poems. And basically these are a series of kennings or riddles, 2-line stanzas associated with the runes. And it's a really good way to start to understand the runes. So I would say my top tip is to grab yourself some great books or audiobooks and enjoy immersing yourself in the Norse mythology. And the key there is enjoy it. Because if you enjoy something, you're going to do it more and you're going to relax into it. So start to get yourself familiar with the Norse gods, with Odin and Frey and Freya and Loki and Balder and Frigg, so that these feel familiar to you. And then if you, whether you want to work with the Younger Futhark or the Elder Futhark, and I'll share more about that another point, I think the rune poems are a great way to start. So I'm going to start with Frey. He's often the first rune. He's the rune alphabet is called the futhark, and this is F, if you like, for Frey. And I'm just going to read 2 of the rune poems right now. The first one is obviously My Old Norse is not, I have translated actually both of these myself, but I'm no expert on Old Norse, so this is all in English. So the first two line stanza is: wealth causes strife amongst kinsmen, the wolf lives in the woods. And the second one, very similar, but just sort of different. Wealth, source of discord amongst kinsmen, and the fire of the sea. And the classic last line translation is and path of the serpent. This is where translation is so important, because actually the path of the serpent, I wish I had this written down now. It is in Old Norse. It's grafside gata, ok grafside gata. And the literal translation of that is ok and graf grave side, shamanics, alternative right brain, alternative sort of sense of consciousness, if you like, gata, gate or path. But that is translated by most people, and I decided to follow this into Path of the Serpent. So just an awareness there that we have these kennings in English, but do, if you're really into this in your own time, do find them in the source language and play around with those original words, because nothing can be translated directly and perfectly from Old Norse into English. We lose something in the translation, and it's up to the translator to choose how to do that. So we have this Norse god Frey. He's a male god. He's from the Varnia. He is the son of Njord, the sea god, and he's the twin of Freya, mistress of magic and side. And Frey is a real god of masculine sexuality. I associate Frey very much with harvest and abundance, with sexuality and passion. The word fee, the sound of his rune is fee. We still use that in modern terms. There is a fee to be paid. In its time, the word fee represented cattle, which was a very early form of movable wealth. So Frey, the sound of his rune is fee. Wealth causes strife amongst kinsmen. Money does. The management of money within a family, within a town, within a city, within a country, it definitely does cause strife. The wolf lives in the wood. I mean, to one degree, we all have to find our own personal meaning to this. We have to find something that is meaningful to us and helps us in our life. To me, this is about the balance of nature, that when everything is in harmony, the wolf is in the woods, and the farmers are down perhaps in the valley or on the shoreline, and everything lives in harmony. So to me, Frey, he personifies the fertile land of the valley. He's connected with summer rain, sun's rays, the corn growing. He's very much associated with the corn god. His harvest and abundance and wealth and, all of that sort of energy. And a really good way to connect to the runes is you get your rune out, you dive into your books, and you find the stories about Frey, find out who he is. You find the rune poems, and you kind of put it all together. You might want to mind map. And then it's to work with the sound of the rune. Now, we can all do this differently, but I do quite a lot of the chanting of the runes is a huge part of my shamanic and healing work that I do professionally. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to chant as I would chant this sound. And maybe come back to this when you're in the right headspace, or you've got the right time. Just really sit with that chant and see where you feel it, see how it makes you feel. And there's two ways to do this. There's classically, I think certain rune sounds are going to have a sort of an energy that is quite universal. but also it may trigger something very personal in you. And I think working with the runes is that delicate balance between the universal or archetypal wisdom, but also the personal response that you have. So just really sitting. And so the deity that this rune is associated with is Frey. And the sound is Fee. 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 And even better than listening to me chant the Fee rune is for you to chant it. I think it's really important. All of the runes in the Younger Futhark have this axis mundi. They have a direct line from between the sky and the earth. So I believe for chanting, we need to replicate that. So sitting upright is ideal, with your feet flat on the earth and your spine upright and your crown to the sky. So then you're creating the axis mundi. If you want to, you could use your arms to create this shape. It's fairly obvious with Fee, though you don't have to. And then as you chant, just don't try and do it right, don't try and do it wrong. Play around with it. See how it makes you feel. See where you, and we all experience the runes differently. Some people are really visual, some people feel energy, some people will experience colors. There is no wrong way to do this because you are connecting to your own personal understanding. And keep notes so that hopefully you are blending the wisdom of the Norse mythology, because don't forget, Norse mythology was an oral tradition. Each generation would have added to that wisdom, that information, and then at some point they were written down. And it's easy to think that the Poetic Edda is almost a Norse Bible, that it's this divine text that contains all the information. I don't think that's true. It stopped an oral tradition and it photographed it at that moment, but it's not complete. It does not contain everything that was in Norse mythology then, and it does not contain everything that's in Norse mythology now, or Norse spirituality, or Norse paganism. So what you're doing here is you're hoping to learn from our ancestors through reading their tales, by reading their kennings. I shall read them just one more time in a minute. But then really leaning into it and bringing your own integration, your own magic, your own understanding. So this rune is the Fee rune. It's for Frey, the male god of the Vanir, son of Njord, twin of Freya. Very much associated with harvest, abundance, gold, movable wealth, the need for everything to be in balance. It's a warning against greed and obsession. And if you want to know about the story of greed and obsession, read about the time that Frey snuck up onto Odin's high seat. It's about fire, anger, passion, obsession, very much connected with male sexuality. He's the Lord of Alfheim, bringer of peace, connection with your ancestors, and using the wisdom of ancestors to create peace in the family. Very much connected with the peace of Frothy. If you are looking at this for a rune reading, for me, it would be connected with wealth, passion, peace, obsession, greed, and ancestors. And if I was to use this rune for healing, I would probably be working on the solar plexus, desire, and self-worth. So I'll be sharing a video next week about Vidar, about who the god is and the energy of his rune.